Thank you for joining us from all around the world. And we hope that within the next hour, you are going to get a sense of all the do's and don'ts when it comes to buying off plan in Israel. I know it's a very big topic, especially for people overseas who may not understand the industry. And we had a wonderful lineup of guests. Unfortunately, one of our guests, Debbie Goldfish, is unable to join us due to a family emergency. But we will make sure that we invite her back onto another webinar very soon. But we will be covering some of the information that she was going to share. And we wish her a refuah shalema. Just a couple of house rules. If you'd like to put some Q&As into the Q&A box, we will try and get to the questions at the end of the session. We're going to try and keep the session to under an hour because it is Sunday, and we do know that everyone probably has very busy schedules. So we will try and do that, try our best to keep it within an hour. And we will be recording this webinar, so everyone will be getting a link with the recording. If you couldn't make it or you have to jump off early, we will send the recording to you. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my colleague and our first guest, Julian Nathan, who is the Managing Director of Hold Real Estate. Julian, welcome.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you. And thanks very much for putting the webinar together.
Sure. I always have so much fun putting these webinars together because it's such a process of finding the guests and then, putting the content together. And I learn so much while I'm doing it. So it's always a pleasure. So I'm very excited about the webinar tonight and very excited that we've got a power woman well, it was going to be a powerful two woman. Now it's only going to be one, but with Women's Week this week, I'm very excited that we've got Liad online with us. And she certainly is super interesting, super creative. And I think it's going to be really fun to kind of go
Definitely.
through.
It was wonderful to meet you, Liad. Thank you for joining.
Meet you too. Thank you.
Julia, let's just kick off. I know you're going to speak in more detail in the end in terms of what pre-sale means and what off-plan means in Israel, and what buyers should be aware of. But let's start by just giving us a bit of a high-level overview of this question that people keep on asking: what is happening with pricing in Israel, and specifically around new developments? Can you give us a bit of background as to why it is what it is? What is going on in terms of production, of building, of developing? What do people need to know to understand the background?
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Nick. It's a good place to start, is why we are where we are. So I think, what's been driving prices in real estate in Israel since 2008, basically, is just that there's more demand for property in Israel than there is supply. So if we look at the number of households in Israel in 1995, 2008, so we'll see the number of households, and then we look at the number of apartments that have been developed for the citizens of Israel, and unfortunately, the industry hasn't been able to keep up. So if we look at it in 1995, there was, 50,000 units less than was required to accommodate the population. And as of last year, there's a shortage of 200,000 units that need to be built in order to keep up with the demand. And unfortunately, because of the war over the last 18 months, that has even slowed. The building in Israel has slowed down dramatically. Thank God it's getting back onto its feet now. But there's been a massive slowdown in delivery of apartments. So we've got the shortage. Hello?
Yes, we're with you.
Sorry, I don't know what happened here, but my screen has, for some reason, it is stopped. I'll be a sec. Sorry about this.
We're already running on a shortage of 200,000 units. With a population.
So we've got a shortage of a number of units that have been developed. So the supply is not meeting demand, and that's a curve that's been like that since 2008. We've also got a shortage, as I mentioned, but we've also got one of the fastest growing populations. So we've got a population that's growing by 2% per annum,
Wow.
And it's anticipated by 2040 that there'll be 13 million people living in Israel. So we need to do something, and government needs to do something to build and allow for more properties to be developed over the next couple of years. Unfortunately, it's been slow. But if we look at what government has been doing, if we look at the zoning and the planning, government has, well, firstly, they own 93% of the land and 7%. So they do control the supply. And essentially what they've been trying to do is they've put in efforts to release land for development on a greater scale. This started in 2010. The governments started building infrastructure around the cities. But until 2012, there was only 30,000 units that were approved. And they've now moved to try and approve 60,000 units. But unfortunately, there's a lag between the approvals and the actual building and the developments. So although they've planned enough on the ground, it's a very, very different situation. Approvals have moved from 5 years to 1.5 years, but we've seen it where we've tried to get approvals for property. It does take longer than 1.5 years. So it's a very challenging time. But, as I mentioned, what the government is doing is they're building infrastructure. So there's been some amazing infrastructure projects that have happened around residential areas. So they spend, the government's approved budgets to build new roads. So there's the metro rail that's being built as well around Israel. There's different roads. So basically, with infrastructure, we can now start developing in more outlying areas. So we've got the south that's getting developed. We've got the north that's getting developed. But if you look at the Gush Dan, the Tel Aviv area, where some of them last year, the second most apartments sold in Israel were in the Tel Aviv area. So you've got people moving in, and we need to get these people moved around. So the project to develop the metro rail around these areas, there's been phenomenal projects around this Gush Dan area that incorporates Tel Aviv. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we look at Tel Aviv. We've got the metro that's expanding. It's incredible that 4 million people live in this Gush Dan area.
Wow, that's
it's quite amazing. That's Tel Aviv, Rehovot, Ra'anana, up to Netanya. So we need to move people around, and that's basically what the government's been doing. And we've all seen the light rail at Tel Aviv. It was launched about 18 months ago, and it's already started to make a big impact. Also, what they started doing is they're moving the army bases out of the center. So if we look at Sarona Market, most of us have been to Sarona Market. It's a really nice area, but that was actually a military base. So they've moved that to the Sterdorf Airport. There was a base there. So they've moved that. And they anticipate over the next couple of years building 100,000 units in that area as well.
So basically, sorry to interrupt you, just so I understand, they're using areas that were previously actual bases. They're moving the bases with everyone on it, and they're building developments on these bases.
That's right, yeah. Because of the demand for accommodation in these areas, that's the only way they could really do it. There are other ways, which I'm going to talk about a bit later, where they're doing renovations to many buildings. But that's part of the plan, was to move their bases up to the north and the south, and particularly the south. So government's been, they've put plans in place. There's lots of plans in place. And hopefully we're going to start seeing a difference. So you'll see the metro rail, they're building 109 stations across Israel, 150 kilometers of trains. So people are going to be able to live in these areas and commute both into Tel Aviv and out of Tel Aviv. So it's going to have a massive impact on this area. Just interestingly, we talk about the metro, just what the metro has done to property prices around the world. So when San Francisco built their metro systems, we saw property prices going up by 18%, in Washington 8%, London 19%, Hong Kong 7% or 15%. And it's still very early days of the metro around the Gush Dan area. So, we're expecting properties to keep on going up in these areas.
Very interesting. And just to kind of preface this entire webinar and the reason why
Yeah.
we wanted to sort of do this webinar and get people on to hear more about what it means to buy off plan and the benefits of buying off plan and what to look out for. What have you noticed, Julian, in terms of foreign buyers buying? Why are they buying? What is the trends that you've noticed? I mean, we've noticed. Certainly, I can say that many people that I speak to are planning on buying off plan because it gives them that sort of runway to finance properties, but it also it's sort of less it's less commitment upfront, I think, both emotionally and financially. What is
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
perspective?
So I think the trend, I would say, over the last year has been people have, they used to say, we're thinking about it. And I'll talk a bit about later, but now what people are doing is they're making decisions to buy. So instead of thinking about it, they're now more and more foreigners are now buying property in Israel. And it's just a combination of, we were chatting to Debbie earlier. It's some of it is an emotional investment, but a lot of young people, there's opportunities now to come study. There's some amazing, English-speaking institutions here where, students are coming. They're taking more time to spending more time here in Israel. And, it's many factors, but I think what's happened, I believe, is that, the world's a smaller place now. So, people can keep in touch with each other a lot easier. Travel's become a lot easier now. So people are a lot more mobile. So one of the things that young people are doing is, in my experience, is they're coming to Israel and they're spending time in Israel, studying in Israel, and want to spend, maybe make Aliyah to Israel. So people like parents and grandparents are now thinking, but if my kids are going to be living there, we might as well start buying property in Israel. And I see that as a big trend from the foreign market.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, many of our clients that we've spoken to, I mean, just the way we even selling property these days is so different from how it was years ago. And I think COVID and the war, it's now people are making decisions quicker and they're making decisions based on the trajectory of their family and where their family is going to be. And even if they're not going to make Aliyah, they're looking at sort of that having a lifestyle investment or just some sort of investment in Israel.
Absolutely. And as we know, Nikki, I mean, these Zoom meetings, it's a trusted medium now. So, we're finding that people are happy to commit on a Zoom call to buying property in certain circumstances.
Yeah. So that's really interesting, and I'm going to jump. We're gonna come back to you a little bit later on. I want to introduce our next guest because I think so much part of buying off plan is being able to visualize what that space looks like, and often it's really difficult when you're dealing with just a piece of paper and a piece of land to visualize how you're going to make this huge financial commitment. So without further ado, let's welcome Liad Twena, who is a hugely dynamic, amazing, creative woman, interior architect with 20 years of experience. You speak, I think, 3 languages.
4.
Welcome, Liad, and tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. So I made Aliyah about 15 years ago from Canada. And I've actually, before I even did my degree, I was an art major in high school. And I wanted to develop the arts and work with something that would be a live canvas for me. So when I got into interior design, it was just like a perfect fit and it fit like a glove. And I knew that it was the right move for me. So I did part of my degree in Canada and part of my degree in Spain, which led me to work also in Panama and to Israel. So now that I'm here, I realized the culture shock and difference. I mean, it's been 15 years, but I've realized the culture shock and difference moving here, even with the things that are like designing your home, designing a space, like what are we used to from abroad, opposed to what Israelis are used to. And binding that bridge together and creating that perfect space here, as well as the sizes. Let's talk about the sizes of the space. It's a huge difference between the way we grow up abroad and our more intimate living in Israel.
For sure. And I know that it's such a big decision for many people, and especially when people get involved at a pre-sale
Yes.
time. it's often quite overwhelming to even think about coming from like a 300 square meter home to now dealing with these tiny 70, 80, 90 square meters or square
Micro living. It's micro living. But at this stage especially, it's so important really to, sit with a designer, sit with an interior architect and figure out those spaces, because I easily create multifunctional zones for my clients. So for example, the safe room is also the office, it's also a guest bedroom, and we do multifunctional things like a Murphy bed coming out from the wall that turns into a table, and all of a sudden this 90-meter apartment really feels a little more spacious because you know how to reuse your rooms and work with those spaces. So I think that's a big, very, very important part of the process.
For sure. And I know that with many of our clients, one of the first things people want to do is sit with an architect actually, and because one of the benefits actually of buying on off plan or on paper is that you can early on make some changes, not only to the choose your own finishes, but make some internal changes. So when we were talking earlier, we were thinking, what's the best way where we can show people why an interior architect is a great person to have on your team? And it's not it's that you give a whole gambit of services, from a turnkey solution to just consultation. Can you give us an example of a project, and what are the kind of tools and that you use to help clients visualize their space, and how that benefits them in the long term? Because many people are thinking, well, is it expensive? Is it worth it? So can you give us a little bit more of more detail on that?
Sure. Well, first of all, the first consultation, when we sit and discuss their needs and wants and what you really want to create in your space, even if you're an investor or if you're purchasing a summer vacation home or making aliyah, all these decisions need to be discussed, and the way you want to enjoy the holidays or certain religious aspects of it. So when we do that, the client breakdown of their needs and wants, we can really start to break down how the space is going to be. And from there, I can move around the walls even before purchasing to be able to match it up for the real estate agents. But once we start that process before, it makes it so much easier to close with the.
How do we create good design? How does design impact our lives? Design is about connecting and creating harmony for those living in their safe haven. Design is a connection to meet people's needs physically, emotionally, and visually. Embracing their needs and wants to create productivity, habits, well-being, and overall happiness in their home. Interior architecture and design for me has the power to move us on an emotional level and can inspire us to be the best version of ourselves. My passion is creating spaces where people feel happier, healthier, and more creative in their day-to-day.
You can see my screen yet?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. It's good to know. Okay. For some reason, it's not full screening. Let's try that again. There we go.
People who are watching, we will share your details after the Zoom.
Sure, my pleasure. Okay, let's start with this process. Okay, so when I moved to Israel, actually, I started my company here, doing a turnkey service and kind of guiding people from start to finish through these processes when you purchase an apartment. Because it's not just about, okay, we bought an apartment, we have to choose a couple finishes and we're done. There's so many elements that go beyond this, from breaking it down to, what we get in the technical specs. Because when you sit around with your developer or the contractor to understand what is in your package that you're receiving, there's so many elements that aren't even spoken about, that, to us foreigners that made aliyah, or to anyone else, it might seem like, oh, of course we're going to receive it. Like, for example, light fixtures, or shower doors, like the glass shower doors that, it's something that seems like it's something that would be obvious, but it's not. So when we go over our technical specifications, even before purchasing, beyond just the space planning, first to see what you receive, we know to also ask for certain elements like an outlet for induction or extra outlets for charging stations in the parking lot for your car. And there's a wide variety of different elements that are needed, maybe to see when they say smart home or home automation, what do they mean? Is it just an intercom system or is it throughout the house? So there's a lot of different elements of understanding what the technical specifications are to purchasing an apartment. And so that's one of the things that we do review. So we go over plans and we start with your needs and wants, and then we break it down to the design process with mood boards and inspirations and to kind of feel out the space as a client. So I'll give you an example. What you see on the left-hand side is the inspiration for one of my clients. They really love that feel. And on the right-hand side are the 3D renderings that I've created.
I think you've got to go one more slide because we're looking at a different slide.
You are? What slide are you on?
There we go. There we go.
Okay, great, wonderful. Can you see the slide?
Yes. So this is what the client would get in one of the first meetings. They would sort of get a plan that looks like that, which is great. It's got like basic sizes, but sometimes very hard to visualize.
Correct.
Yeah.
And 1 second, I can move this around. Okay, so on the left-hand side would be on my left at least, it's the actual plan that you would receive from the contractor or create. And there's so much information that you might not understand as a developer or as a client purchasing an apartment. So I create these 3D renderings for you where you see the space from a bird's eye view. So you can see where the ping pong table is on the balcony, and you can see where the armchairs are in the living room and where the dining table is located in the kitchen. And it really gives you a feel for the space. And then you can see that because coming from 300 meters or 400 meters or 600 meters to a more intimate size, we need to make sure we still got everything that we want in the space, even if it's a little more micro living. So that's definitely important to take into consideration. And that's one of the things that I do with these 3Ds. Let me give you another example. Here, for example. Can you see the bedroom?
Yes.
In plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the plan on the one side looks a little bit scary with all the red dots and but yes, definitely the one on my right hand side looks a lot more aspirational
and easier to understand. So when we talk about bed location,
double bed, a queen bed, you know what the
right. Yeah, and everything, and where the windows are located and where everything else is. Because at the end of the day, all the technical drawings need to be done anyway by myself and my team. But that's not something that the client necessarily needs to go through and understand, like the mini details of what the trim looks. When they see it in a 3D, then it just forms life in itself, and you understand the color palette, you understand the materials that are going into it, you understand the look and feel of the space after knowing that all the functions and forms are there. So it's something really important.
Can I just ask a question? Because for some people, this process starts at least 2 years or 2.5 years before you even start selecting finishes for the apartment. So this is kind of, this 3D rendering, would you then sit with what the developer gives the client and choose the colors, and even at this early stage, sort of get the client excited about the prospect of what the apartment could look like, even if it's just for rental? Because I know that one of the big things is, people aren't necessarily going to live in their apartments, or they're going to use it just as a vacation or holiday rental. They may want to just go with the standard finishes, and then you would obviously advise them at that point what they should include in the contract.
Yeah, I think, Nick, if I can just come in there, it's a very good point. And I think Liad and I have got a meeting, I think it's on Wednesday, with a client overseas who's bought an apartment in Tel Aviv. And the apartment's getting delivered in August 2027. And we're, the first meeting, we're going to meet husband and wife. We're going to go through what their requirements are, what the purpose is, and then, we'll take it to the next step. But often if people are just buying something in Israel, as an investment, just to have something, put a long-term tenant in.
Mhm.
We don't recommend making too many changes because it doesn't really affect the rental income, but it's
Right.
important to have that first discussion just to understand what the requirement is.
100%, and also what the technical specs that you're receiving from the contractor. If it says we have air conditioning, is it VRF system? Is it a multi-functional system? Do you need to upgrade it? Like, there's certain things that we review together to see if we should upgrade certain things or not. And then once you also, even if it's for rental, putting together a 3D, you as a client know what your apartment's going to look like. It's a game changer. Also, when we break down budgets and go through all the specifications, it's so much easier when you know and you can feel the space. Let me walk you through a little more. So this is just a couple of the different bathroom and ensuite 3Ds that I've done for multiple clients, just to show a wide variety of styles and finishes that can be done. Also for the interiors, also for bedrooms. All these are 3D designs, and they're all 3D renderings from my office.
Just
So
in case people thought they would have to be stuck with that speckled floor.
so no,
That we all love so much.
yes. But it's a really, really different variety. So I put together a page of a mix of mood boards that I create for clients. So one of the first phases that we go through is really getting into the mood that helps us put together and visualize those 3Ds. Even if you're only receiving your apartment in 3 years or 4 years, it's a game changer because you can envision yourself already being there and enjoying the space. Like, for example, in this living room.
And I
then,
guess with the budgeting side of things, it's very helpful for people to know upfront. I know it's something that we try and do early on, is put in amounts for those miscellaneous items that could potentially, they will, by the time it gets delivered, that they want to add in, like a kitchen island, for example, or I don't know if people know this, but most apartments don't come with electronics in the kitchen. And there's a range of different levels of, what you can select in terms of companies. So I think that's also quite important. That whole idea of like doing this upfront could actually potentially save money in the long run.
Yeah, it does actually save money in the long run, because when you know what your apartment looks like and you can feel the space of the 3D as you go through it, which I'll show you the walkthrough of the 3D, which is quite spectacular. You can really experience and understand what your space is going to look like. So when we budget it and we go to different carpenters or different furniture companies or even different appliances, we really know how to play with that cost versus needs and wants. And maybe, you're used to a Sub-Zero fridge, or maybe you're used to Siemens or some sort of a different appliance that might be important to bring into the home. So we do that breakdown, and it just makes life easier when you see your home in 3D and it hasn't even been built yet. So there's
some amazing technologies out there at the moment.
Oh yeah.
You can get really a really good feel for what you're getting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the presentations we're doing now on new projects are virtual, where we, if people can't come to Israel, we're showing them the area, and you have Google Earth, and you have all these cool tools, which really helps. I mean, obviously there's nothing better than actually being on the ground and seeing it, but firsthand, but it definitely helps.
So I want to show you one of the 3D. I'm going to use my clients at one of my clients as a test case, just so you to understand. Let's log into our 3D. Here we go. For you to really experience what I'm talking about. Okay, let's see. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Here we come. Okay.
Yeah.
I
can see it now.
Good. Did a full screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So here, for example, I'm actually located in the master ensuite in the bathroom. Let me zoom out for you to see that. And then I can actually walk through the space. Let's go through the doors. If you can see on the right-hand corner, there's an actual plan with all the location dots. So I can click on a location, and it'll take me there into the master bedroom. And then you get a feel of what the space is going to look like. And you can actually walk around it. And what's good is that if we've chosen even a wallpaper or a paint sample, then we can put it in. If the clients collect art, I can place it in as well. If they have a certain finishing that they want to place. So it's really nice because you really, really feel your space. Let's just go to the balcony and the living room just for you to get an idea of how visual the visualizations are. They're literally
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Give you a couple more locations. That's from the dining room to the kitchen. You can see the vitrine here. They have a double sink, and yeah, it's
Liad, how long would it take to make up something like this from a brief, or once you received a brief?
Okay, so it really depends also on the client and the situation and how much time that needs to be done. If we're talking about first and foremost a plan that we need to give into a contractor or to the developer or give off to you to purchase the off plan with the client, then it would be about 7 to 10 business days to recreate the plans that are needed and review the technical specifications. But to go through this 3D, it's a work in progress. So it's really up to how many meetings we have with the clients and how intense it is. This could be done within 2 months, and it can also be done within 6 months, according to how urgent it is. So it really once it's purchased ahead of time, the apartment, and we have so much time off plan to really get into it, we price out everything, and it's a game changer when you see this and you know how much it's going to cost and you know that it's actually going to look like this. And part of my turnkey service is also to follow up on site, to meet the contractor, to meet the developer, to check that all the outlets are done according to plan, and speak to the smart home automation services. And I walk them through the whole process, which is a game changer for whoever lives abroad. Yeah.
Sure.
Amazing.
Well, thanks, Liad. And I think what we'll do is we'll share your information. I know you've generously offered to do a free consultation for anyone on this webinar who has or is thinking about or looking at plans at the moment. So that's amazing. So if there are people that are in the process and you want to reach out and get Liad's amazing advice and just get a sense of what she can do for you, then we will share her details. Liad, thank you so much. It's been amazing just to see the stuff that you do. It's so inspiring. I mean, I wish I could have one of those apartments.
At the end of the day, it's really important for them to know that they have such a strong team around them, because that's what's important is knowing that, they have you and Julian and me and whoever else is on the team to put things together for them that, they feel that they're in good hands.
Amazing. Great. And I see we have quite a lot of questions coming up. So we're gonna keep the questions till the end. Julian, let's jump back into talking about buying off plan. Let's start off with why is it a good idea and why are people going this route from both an investment and a lifestyle perspective rather than buying secondhand?
Yeah, I think that just I see one of the questions that came up was do I buy a secondhand or an older apartment in Zichron Yaakov or something new in Netanya, and what's the benefits? So mainly obviously in new developments you're getting the latest technologies. So that'll mean from the tiling, from the way the electricity is supplied and put into the apartments, from the plumbing. So you're getting latest technologies and the air conditioning units. And then very importantly as well is just from a cash flow point of view, from a financing point of view. So second-hand apartment, obviously you need to come up with the money now, whereas in projects, and I'm going to cover it a little bit later, where in some deals now you only need to actually put down 10% and the balance sometimes is payable at the end. So mainly timing, cash flow, and new technologies. But with people like Liad on the team, a secondhand apartment if somebody does want a secondhand apartment. It's very simple nowadays with the technologies that we've just seen to actually make changes and do renovations to the apartments. So, that's the main differences.
Right. So I saw one of the questions were like asking what are the difference in prices of the different areas, and I'm not sure if we'll touch on all of that tonight, but I think that it is important to kind of talk about these areas of urban renewal, and why. I mean, the way that we select the developers in our portfolio. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that and the developers that we work with, and just give people a sense of when you're working with a team that kind of has vetted the projects and understands the value of areas?